This is the one you're waiting for. Everybody loves a bit of tax before lunch. I'll give you a bit of background to Agri-taxation, a word on the Agri-taxation review process, the outcome and its implementation over budgets 15 and 16, and then a very brief word on the future. This is a very succinct budget announcement in 2014 regarding the Agri-tax review, because it sets out its rationale and the objective of the review. The rationale, there was a significant information gap about the cost and effectiveness of the measures, and Minister Noonan said that the objective of the review was to identify what works and what doesn't, and redirect the existing level of expenditure towards activities of maximum benefit to the sector of the economy. So what has the Department of Agriculture got to do with tax? Well, I mentioned Minister Noonan, so I better mention Minister Coveney. Minister Coveney says taxation policy is primarily the responsibility of the Minister for Finance. However, I have ongoing contact with Minister Noonan to ensure taxation policy reflects the government's commitment to agriculture, as evidenced by our cooperation on the Agri-tax review and its implementation over the last two budgets. And of course, the Office of the Revenue Commissioners is responsible for the implementation of the taxation system. So just give you a little bit of history. Agri-tax has been an issue since the very foundation of the state. In 1924, the Minister for Agriculture, Patrick Hogan, presented the Executive Council with two memoranda detailing the burden that agricultural rates placed on farmers at a time when bad weather meant that agriculture was in crisis. So that's no change there. The government agreed, and the concession was continued in subsequent years. Of course, agri-food is a key sector in the economy. Supports 170,000 jobs, 8.5% employment, so over 7% of GDP, 13% of merchandise exports, 10.5 billion of exports to 175 countries, especially for the agriculture sector, 74% of total expenditure in the sector is on wages, raw materials and services sourced in Ireland, compared to 37% of total expenditure for all other sectors. And of course, it's widely spread out through the country. Obviously, agri-food is a key sector of the economy. So the Agri-taxation review, I was a member of the working group in the Agri-tax review. It was overseen by a working group made up of Finance, the Department and Revenue. We set out terms of reference using the objective as stated by Minister Noonan earlier, and it included three main elements: a public consultation, a cost-benefit analysis and an international benchmarking exercise. The public consultation, very important part of the process, was launched by both ministers February 2014. We had 46 written submissions with over 300 detailed suggestions across a range of tax heads, and we had consultative meetings with 21 key stakeholders. Indicon economic consultants carried out the cost-benefit analysis and the international benchmarking. The CBA found a positive net economic contribution to the Irish economy from agri-tax. It found that in general there were more sector-specific agri-tax reliefs in Ireland than apply in some of other countries, but it concluded that measures support a critical sector of the Irish economy. Indicon were very involved in the process. They attended all the consultative meetings with stakeholders and had access to the written submissions. So the work of the Agri-tax group, it met on a regular basis during 2014, considered written submissions, the consultative meetings and the independent Indicon report. Also considered Food Harvest 2020, the new CAP, the programme for government, particularly government commitments to further assist further expansion of the agri-food sector and promote greater land mobility and the involvement of young farmers. So I have a prop here. There it is. It's a fairly weighty tome. You can download it from the website if you've nothing else to do. So I'll try and summarise what's in it. The working group concluded that it is justified to continue support for the primary sector and agriculture through taxation measures with some additions and amendments. The working group stated that the newly defined agri-tax policy objectives and the resulting range of recommendations filled its brief and will contribute to maximising the potential of the primary agriculture sector. So I'll just run through the key policy objectives. It set out 25 recommendations grouped under key policy objectives, and Deputy Dial alluded to them earlier. They are to increase the mobility and the productive use of land, assist succession, complement wider agriculture policies and schemes such as supporting investment, environmental sustainability, alternative farming models, and very topical at the moment, responses to increasing income volatility. So the review implementation, first of all we had Budget 2015. The review was published by the Minister for Finance as part of Budget 2015, and it has two parts, the Working Group report and the Indicon report. Budget 2015 incorporated 12 new agri-taxation measures, and what was described at the time by Minister Coveney as the most substantial package of its kind ever introduced in a single budget. So a bit of background, increased mobility in the productive use of land. Why? Well, one of the main challenges facing farmers who want to increase their productivity. Less than 0.5% of the total land area of the country is sold per annum. Some 40% of farms rent or lease land from other landowners, and the majority of those cases are for short-term contract or lettings. At the time of the review, this was estimated at some 6 times the amount of long-term leasing. So why incentivise long-term leasing? Well, it allows progressive farmers to enlarge their farm holdings, increase productivity. It allows young farmers and new entrants to the sector gain access to land by providing a cheaper means of long-term access to land as opposed to the relatively high cost of ownership, and provides security of tenure and certainty required to encourage lessees to maintain and make an investment in improving land. It's especially important in accessing bank credit. Financial institutions generally match loan terms to lease duration, and obviously longer duration means more manageable repayments. And it also provides a route to retirement for older farmers, assisting in generational renewal. So how did Budget 2015 incentivise long-term leasing? Well, it retained the existing relief and 5 new measures. It increased income thresholds for the relief by 50%. It introduced a 4th threshold for lease periods of 15 years or more, removed the lower age threshold of 40 years of age for eligibility, allowed non-connected limited companies as an eligible lessee, and the final one is actually still subject to commencement order because it's running some state aid difficulties, even though in monetary terms it's not a very significant measure, but it relieves stamp duty on long-term leases. But we're hopeful that that will eventually be commenced. Who benefits? Young farmers, farmers seeking to increase production, older farmers seeking an income in retirement or semi-retirement, and an increase in productivity benefits the rural economy generally, and the agri-food sector benefits from an increase in the production of raw materials. The next policy objective, of course, is assist succession. The age profile of Irish farmers is increasing. There's many social and economic reasons why. Succession management is a challenge for farmers. At the time of the review, the number of farmers aged under 35 had fallen by more than 50% between 2000 and 2010 to just 6.2% of all holders. More than half of all farm holders in 2010 were aged 55 years or older, while more than a quarter were over 65 years, and an estimated 50% of farmers aged over 50 do not have an identified farm successor. So what did Budget 2015 do? Well, it retained agri-relief from capital acquisitions tax, probably the most important relief there, and retirement relief from capital gains tax, and the current stamp duty exemptions and transfer of land. There were 4 new measures: a targeting of agricultural relief to full-time farmers or those who lease land out on a long-term basis. Again, that's the purpose of that is to increase production and get land that may be unproductively used into the hands of productive farmers. For transfers under retirement relief, extension of the eligible letting period of qualifying assets 25 years. The next one is quite important because it runs out at the end of 2016. For transfers other than to a child on retirement relief, Connick-acre lettings are not eligible, but until the end of 2016 as a once-off measure they are. So it's an exit option for those who have been leasing out in Connick on a long-term basis. And the extension of stamp duty consanguinity relief, relief related to related persons, to the end of 2015. So who benefits? Young farmers in succession situations, older farmers seeking exit options, and increase in productivity benefits the rural economy generally, as I said before. So there were 3 new measures under to complement wider agriculture policies and schemes. The farmer structuring was extended to include whole farm replacement, and again it's important to note that that's due to expire at the end of 2016. Following 2, as I said, increasing income volatility, 2 important measures there. Averaging went from 3 to 5 years. and where a spouse receives income from a non-farm diversification trade or profession, that's now allowed. So the important measures which were retained, obviously capital allowances, stock reliefs, the tax relief on the occupation of woodlands, and partnerships, which you've heard a good bit about this morning already, and more and on in budget 2016. So it wasn't possible to obviously implement all the recommendations just one budget. Agri-tax working group reconvened during 2015, and major new additional measures were announced. The initiative on family transfer partnerships to assist succession, and the removal of forestry income from the high earners restriction for active foresters and farmers. And the introduction of these measures essentially completed the implementation review, but I must warn you that the finance bill still has to be enacted, so I mean these were announced in budget 2016. The family transfer partnerships, the rationale, there are a number of barriers to the lifetime transfers of family farms, requirement of 2 generations to derive an income stream, financial security concerns for the older generation, full transfer of family farms sometimes considered too abrupt a change. The family transfer partnership structure in which the family members enter a partnership and appropriate profit sharing agreement with the provision for the transfer of the family farm to the younger farmer at the end of a specified period. And to support this, tax credit for £5,000 per annum for 5 years can be allocated to the partnership, thereby incentivising the transfer and mitigating some of the financial concerns. It enables a gradual transfer of control and facilitates knowledge transfer. And I must say this measure, although we had positive feedback from the Commission in advance of budget 2016, this is still subject to the full state aid approval process, and pending this, full details will be finalised in 2016. So myself and John have a bit of work to do between then and 2016. The removal of forestry income from the higher restriction, very important in that income from woodlands managed on a commercial basis is tax exempt, but it's subject to the higher restriction limits since 2006. It's thought that this is having a disproportionate effect on forest owners, as the majority of income comes at a single point in time, clear felling, and it is disproportionately impacting long-term decision making and afforestation planting targets. Although people may not have been caught by the higher restriction, there is this thing, well, look, I'm going to have to pay a big lump of tax in 20, 30 years time when I'm clear felling, and it's disproportionately impacting the long-term decision making there. It's a significant measure in support of the National Forestry Policy. It's of major economic importance, as well as the social and recreational benefits. Huge role environmentally in terms of carbon sequestration and potential biomass energy, and obviously the preservation of biodiversity and natural habitats. Just to mention that the department itself, there's a time lag between revenue information, obviously, because returns have to be collated and they're coming in a year or two. So to get some idea of what budget 2015, what the land leasing changes, what effect they had, we conducted a survey during the summer, and you know, again, this is among single payment applicants or basic payment applicants that had signified that they'd leased land during the year. We mentioned this already, but among the findings were, you know, of those leasing exclusively on one basis, another a higher proportion were now on long-term leasing. There was a shift in 2015, and almost 2/3 indicated would like to increase the duration of the lease. And we've plenty of anecdotal evidence as well that long-term land leasing is taken off. But I mean, it's a huge cultural change to move from the system of Conacre, which we're used to long-term leasing. So this is a kind of a generational change which will take a number of years to take effect. Just a quick word on taxation barriers to greater female participation in agriculture. I mean, this came up during the public consultation, that certain conditions act as a barrier, specifically conditions relating to ag relief and retirement relief prevent spouses from registering ag assets in joint names. Revenue have confirmed that there is no technical taxation barrier in ag relief to joint ownership by spouses, once the terms and conditions of relief continue to be met by the successor. There is an issue with retirement relief, specifically the usage requirement for eligibility, which may be more difficult to resolve, and it's something we're discussing with finance and revenue. So that was another recommendation of the review. An important recommendation in the review was that the working group should ensure better data collection on the costs and benefits of the measures, and a major development in this regard is the profile of the farming sector, which was published by Revenue in October 2015. It's an interesting read if you're interested in taxation, and it's on their website. A very brief word on the future. Bernie and Valerie said the future is very hard to predict, so I won't try and predict it, but I'll have a quick word. The review was described as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to examine and develop public policy in this area. As a result, agri-tax was a significant focus in the last two budgets. There is now a coherent joined-up set of tax measures in place, and ongoing evaluation of these will be the primary objective for, I suspect, policymakers in finance in the coming years. The Agri-tax review brings a clear focus. It underpins current supports and provided innovative measures enthusiastically adopted by government. And as Minister Coveney said at the time of Budget 2015, I expect the impact of these measures to be felt for a generation to come. And we don't expect another agri-taxation review for another generation. But in the meantime, there'll be always scope to consider improvements and new innovations. I work in the Economics and Planning Division in Department of Agriculture. We're responsible for business issues, so if people want to approach us on a one-to-one basis, we can talk about improvements, innovations and so on, and we're there to talk. And just finally, agri-taxation, I mean, it's an important pillar in achieving policy goals in the sector. You've heard a little bit about Foodwise 2025, so I'll leave you with a nice picture. Foodwise 2025, hashtag Foodwise 2025, we're in 2015 now, so the whole hashtag is very important. Increase the value of exports by 85% to 19 billion and deliver a further 23,000 jobs in the agri-food sector. So that's the kind of targets we're aiming for. So, thank you.